Good morning, everyone. Appreciate you all being here. I'm glad to be in Springfield on behalf of the greatest freaking city in the world, the city of Chicago. My team and I are here to continue our ongoing conversations with legislators about our key issues for the state of Illinois' upcoming budget. As we know, we are facing unprecedented threats from the federal government that puts an incredible amount of pressure on both the city of Chicago and our state. That is why it is more important than ever that we work to find collective solutions to respond to the challenges that we face. Some of the priorities of this year's budget that we plan to discuss include the telecommunications tax amendment, the 911 surcharge extension, the One System Initiative funding, and the Illinois State Board of Education's mandated categoricals. Each of these priorities will help the city of Chicago to generate the critical revenues that are necessary. We are also continuing to explore long-term priorities around funding for public transportation, education, and potential revenue options. I do look forward to our ongoing discussions and how we will collaborate to invest in the people of Chicago. With that, I'll take questions.
Starting right here.
Yeah, so honestly, the budget this year is tight. So
Yep.
can you speak on how, in a sense, you could be skipping the line for downstate lawmakers who want to, work on their own transportation appropriations? Can you talk about that?
Well, look, this is not about who gets to stand in what place in line. This is about what we have to do as an entire state to ensure that all of Illinois is supported. My responsibility is the city of Chicago. Our presentation is actually quite modest. The overall ongoing issues for revenue that will benefit the entire state, those are part of short and long-term conversations. I've been a part of efforts statewide to generate revenue for working people, and I will continue to do that.
I'm here, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Obviously you're coming during a week where there's a lot of people coming here making asks to the governor and lawmakers, for lobbying day, lobbying week, so to speak. The governor had suggested a week ago that perhaps you should have come maybe sooner. I mean, Chicago being the economic engine it is, maybe you should have come sooner to express what your Springfield agenda is, because the budget is, put together, last year, and then it's proposed in February. Do you think that presents any kind of obstacle for you, given that we're a month away from the scheduled adjournment here in Springfield?
This is not the first time that we've put forth these representations of what the city of Chicago needs. These are part of ongoing conversations that we've had for months.
Mayor, two things on immigration. First off, can you compare the peak of the Biden administration new arrivals, how much you were spending, the total number of people, compared to, say, last week? And then also the DOJ's lawsuit. You guys are looking to dismiss that. The DOJ says that an illegal alien was released from Cook County Jail without ICE being able to intervene, and then 17 days later was arrested, suspected of murder. How are the welcoming city policies not harming public safety?
Well, first of all, public safety is a top priority for me, like I would imagine all mayors around the state of Illinois. And violent crime continues to go down in the city of Chicago. I'm not sure if you've been able to track those numbers, but since I've been in office, there's been a precipitous decline in violence, and we're going to continue to do all that is necessary to create a safer Chicago for all. When the migrant mission was at its height, particularly around the fall of 2023 and going into 2024, we put forth a bus ordinance that worked to regulate and bring some calm to this crisis. Remember, it was the governor of Texas that attacked the state of Illinois. Those buses did not have to come to Chicago or anywhere else. That was a conscious decision by, quite frankly, a hateful person who wanted to create division within our country. By the time we were in the DNC, there were essentially no individuals being transported to the city of Chicago. So the border control that you're speaking of actually happened under the Biden administration.
And as far as the costs?
Well, I mean, look, obviously the costs are different because we brought calm to it. You know, the governor of Texas spent roughly $220 million of taxpayer dollars to create disruption. I believe it was an intentional attack against our democracy, but thank goodness for good-hearted people that we were able to respond to that attack and were able to level set. Here's what ultimately needs to happen. We do need Congress to actually hold the executive branch in check. We can't normalize what this president is doing. He has eroded the Constitution, and that's why there's significant lawsuits all over the country that are pushing back against the unconstitutional nature of his iniquitous form of governance.
Mayor,
Hey.
You know, it's not on your public list of priorities, but, you know, transit, the governance and structure fix and potential funding, you know, why wasn't that on your list of priorities? And do you have a specific ask either on the governance model or on how to raise revenue?
Well, because it's on the priority list of the entire state of Illinois. I mean, there's a specific list, and then there are the things that we know we have to do, right? And so my team, working with the Chicago Transit Authority, has been very clear about the importance of ensuring that, you know, the region that generates 87% of ridership has to receive its fair share in funding. That's not, you know, an unusual ask. That's been the ongoing, you know, characterization of the people of Chicago and the region since Mayor Harry Washington, right? So that has been a part of a larger, broader conversation around a host of issues, but these are very specific, modest presentations that speak to some of the technical things that we can do to sharpen our ability to deliver quality services for the people of Chicago.
Just to follow up, President Clark-Winkle told me she does favor more of a consolidation of the agencies, I think more so than you've expressed.
Mhm.
Are you worried that that may come out of this, that you know, kind of Chicago loses its influence over regional transit?
Well, you know, again, you know, my responsibility as the chief executive of the city of Chicago is to advocate for the best interests of the people of Chicago, and that's what I'm doing. It's no secret that, again, the CTA in the region, we generate 87% of ridership. So the economic vibrancy of our public transit system is centered in the city of Chicago. So the city of Chicago deserves its fair share, and I'm going to continue to advocate for that as I've already done.
Continuing along those same lines, what sort of funding models do you think would be helpful for state lawmakers to look at to close this gap, at least in the short term?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You know, look, I think that there are a number of elements that have been discussed throughout this entire process. I'm not going to act as if there's one particular form of revenue that works best. What my intentions are is to, you know, ensure that the voice of Chicago is speaking in unison. And again, we as a city, and then if subsequent as a region, 87% of the ridership and the revenue is generated from the city of Chicago. And so a funding mechanism that doesn't burden working people, and a funding mechanism that allows for, you know, those that have means are able to contribute more to the vibrancy of our city and our state.
Or just to follow up on that real quick, you mentioned that 88%. Does that mean
7.
87%? Does that mean the city of Chicago, the residents, should be the majority group funding public transportation?
Well, I mean, that's a conclusion that one can draw, right? You know, look, I believe in sharing. I do. I'm a middle child. I'm accustomed to doing it. And the people of Chicago deserve their fair share. That's all.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
I'm an intern for the Chicago Tribune, and
Oh, okay.
I'm wondering, so there's clearly some tension between you and Governor Pritzker, and I'm wondering how much of an obstacle do you see that being to fulfilling your Springfield agenda?
So I bear no tension against anyone. I don't. You know, we have worked together on a number of issues, whether it's the One System initiative, which is in his budget, and we just want to make sure that line doesn't get skipped. That was for you. And, you know, look, if anyone believes that politicians all sit around thinking how we can be each other's godchildren's parents, that's not reality. Just because you have disagreement doesn't mean that that's an obstacle. That's called democracy. You know, there are people in my party that I've ran against and beat because I believe that they have carried out policies that are akin to, what we're seeing right now in the federal government. But in no way, the times in which, the governor and I may have had different approaches is somehow some impediment to be able to do right for the people of Chicago, state of Illinois.
That's WBEZ. I was wondering if you guys had any other requests to plug this $1 billion shortfall that the city might be facing.
That the state might be facing, or the city will be facing?
The city will be facing.
The city will, okay. Part of the presentation that we put forth, the items that I laid out, have the potential to generate revenue, right? And so that is the impetus behind, the real modest presentation that we have put forward. As I said, we as a state have to have longer term conversations around revenues, right? The President of the United States of America is making cuts to our public health department. The impact that can have on our local public health department and our ability to be able to track disease and prevent it from spreading is quite severe. He's making cuts to the environment, right? And we know with all the environmental challenges that we're experiencing, it's life-threatening. The cuts to education that would undermine our ability to support individuals with special needs, right? I can go on and on. The Department of Justice, which was alluded to earlier, violent crime continues to go down in the city of Chicago. Significant drop in crime. Long way to go, but what would be an impediment to the success that we've had in the city of Chicago would be the threats that are coming down and which we believe are unconstitutional. So that's why as a state, as a city, we have to come together collectively to think about long-term solutions to deal with not just the $3.1 billion, I believe is projected by the state of Illinois, the forecast that I put forward for the next 2 years. But it's also the impetus behind this working group that we're putting together to ensure that all stakeholders are playing a part in solving our collective challenges.
Morning, Mayor.
Hey, good morning.
Is the modest ask that you have, is that really part of just sort of lowering expectations, knowing that the budget is really tight for state lawmakers?
Well, I mean, we do know that there are budget challenges all over the country, so this is not unique to the state of Illinois or to the city of Chicago. What we have put forth, we believe, is a reasonable presentation that gets us a step closer to solving the critical issues that we have. My expectations for the people of Chicago will always remain high because they are high for me. But what they also expect me to do is to take an approach that gets us 1, 2, 3, 4 steps closer to our end. Look, you're not gonna solve 40 years of negligence in one session. You're just not gonna do that. And so my approach is, I'm gonna be here for a while. So we'll keep moving the ball forward.
Mayor, do you have a follow-up, if I could?
Sure.
The Public Safety Committee is taking up the revised curfew ordinance. Are you on board with what is being brought up for a vote there today? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, what I've said before, thank you for that question. Top priority always to keep people safe. My motivation is actually to prevent these type of gatherings from taking place. What I've said from the very beginning, because it's well documented, that there's no evidence that lowering the curfew will get at the problem.
So you're against it?
I've always been against lowering the curfew. Like, that's not breaking news,
No,
Craig.
we're not talking about lower.
I got you, but I just want to take you through
The new way they're looking at doing it.
Can I walk you through it though? Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah.
So
I just wanna
that's
make sure
all.
You're answering the question I'm asking.
I want to walk you through it. So the proposal to concentrate the lowering of the curfew in a particular region, we do see that there are some potential constitutional challenges around that. Now, what's being proposed in this instance, there are still concerns that I have about the constitutionality of it. And what my ultimate goal is to ensure, and I brought people together to have these conversations, that we prevent these occurrences from happening. Yes.
You've mentioned revenue proposals kind of broadly. Do you have anything specific that you're talking about?
Yeah, look, there's nothing, surreptitious about our presentation around revenues, right? We have a flat income tax. That's a problem. Everybody knows that. It's a problem, right? There are too many corporate loopholes in this state that working people across this state don't get to benefit, because there's an special attention to a particular subgroup of corporations that have drained our system, right? And whether you are a non-for-profit in Peoria, or if you are a farmer, or if you're a community-based organization, or you're a school district, the way the trajectory is occurring, there's not going to be enough in the long run to respond to our retirement obligations and responsibilities, as well as the investments that the people of the state of Illinois, and particularly the city of Chicago, want us to make. And so we have to look at every single option on the table to ensure that we create an economic structure that benefits working people across this state.
Mayor Johnson has time for one more question, please.
During the governor's budget address in February, he alluded to kind of tightening the belt of the state's budget in terms of spending. With Chicago kind of facing its own shortfall, is that something that's been brought up for you to kind of tighten up spending within the city?
Yes, that's a great question, and we have done that. Last year's budget, we cut across the board 3%, right? Look, these are very difficult times, and finding productive ways in which we can administer government is the challenge and the responsibility of all of us. That's why I put together this working group that will bring cross sectors to the table to be able to do that. Again, this is not unique to Chicago or the state of Illinois. This is something that is happening around the country, particularly at a time when we're being threatened by someone who is, I've made it very clear that his actions have not only been iniquitous, they have been reprehensible and irresponsible and abhorrent. We'll take another one. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I had a question, a little different, but I wanted to ask you about, for the first time, Chicago has adequate shelter space for homeless families, but the city doesn't have adequate space for single adults. And what's the city's plan to expand shelters for everyone who needs it in the city?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for acknowledging that for the first time in a decade that we do not have a single person on the waiting list. This is the work of the collective work that the governor and I have done. This is another example of how we've worked together. A 126% increase year to year. So what we're doing now is, again, making sure that funding remains. And look, if the governor is apt to throw a few more in there, of course, he's well within his authority to do that. So what we're doing is we're looking at the configuration of our shelters locally to be able to, establish room for everyone. And this is an ongoing challenge that, the city of Chicago has faced. My administration have led the way in bringing about the type of structural changes that have caused the numbers that you've just expressed. The ultimate goal is to build more housing, right? And to build more affordable housing, and we're doing that in Chicago.
And the city is being sued by Access Living because shelters are not ADA compliant. What's the city doing about that?
Well, again, we're ensuring that every single family that is struggling with housing has access to temporary shelter. We're going to continue to build more affordable homes, and we're going to make sure that at a time in which that we are working to build a structure and a shelter system that we have not built before, we'll make sure that we get all of it right. Thank you all very much.
Mayor,
Thank you.